Suriname sits quietly on the northeast shoulder of South America, a small country with a story rich in diversity and economic transformation. It is a nation defined by its vast, unspoiled rainforests and the powerful rivers that carve through them. This story is not just about resources like sugar, bauxite, gold, oil. It is a story of people. It is about the resilience of those who have navigated centuries of change, from the earliest indigenous settlements to the complex global economy of today. The nation's economic history is a series of boom and bust cycles. The central theme of Suriname's economic journey is its deep connection to global commodity markets. Understanding this recurring cycle is essential to understanding Suriname itself and the choices it faces today. We will walk through this history decade by decade, tracing the major shifts that have defined the nation. Long before the first European ship sighted its coast, the land we now call Suriname was home to vibrant indigenous communities. Arawak Carib lived in harmony with the abundant nature surrounding them. Their economy was based on subsistence trade, not on currency or accumulation of wealth in the modern sense. They cultivated cassava, hunted in the dense forests, fished in the great rivers that crisscrossed the country. They developed sophisticated knowledge of the land, which allowed them to thrive for centuries. The arrival of Europeans in the 17th century marked a profound and irreversible turning point. In 1667, the Dutch took control from the English. The economic landscape began its dramatic transformation. The Dutch saw the fertile coastal plain not as a home, but as a source of profit. They established a plantation economy, a system designed to produce valuable cash crops for export to Europe. Vast tracts of forest were cleared, sugar estates, coffee estates, cotton estates. This new economic model was entirely dependent on a brutal system of forced labor, leading to the enslavement and transportation of hundreds of thousands of Africans. Throughout the 1700s, the plantation system reached its peak. Sugar, often called white gold, was incredibly lucrative. Suriname became one of the most profitable colonies in the Dutch Empire. The wealth generated was immense, but concentrated in the hands of a small European elite. The harsh conditions led many to escape into the interior. They formed resilient maroon communities, creating their own societies and economies in the heart of the rainforest. The economic and social model built on slavery was unsustainable and morally bankrupt. The British abolished the slave trade in 1807, slowing the supply of new captives. Finally, on July 1, 1863, the Netherlands abolished slavery in its colonies, including Suriname. This momentous event ended a dark chapter, but it also triggered a new economic crisis for the plantations. The colonial government and plantation owners, desperate to keep the export economy alive, looked overseas for a new source of cheap labor. Beginning in 1873, the Dutch started bringing indentured laborers from British India. Later, from 1890, workers were also recruited from the Dutch East Indies, signed contracts committing them to several years of labor on the plantations in exchange for passage and a meager wage. Javanese farmers, Hindustani farmers were instrumental in developing rice cultivation. Despite these changes, the late 19th and early 20th centuries were a period of economic stagnation for Suriname. In the early 20th century, a new discovery changed Suriname's economic destiny: bauxite. This unassuming ore, the primary source of aluminum, the American aluminum company Alcoa established its subsidiary, the Suriname Bauxite Company, Suralco, in 1916. Mining operations began in the town of Moengo. For the first time, Suriname's economy became linked not to agriculture but to heavy industry. This shift pulled the country out of prolonged stagnation. The turning point for the bauxite industry came with World War II. Aluminum was a critical strategic material, essential for building aircraft, ships, and other military equipment. Suriname, with its stable supply and location outside the main theaters of war, became the single most important supplier of bauxite to the United States and the Allied powers. During the war, Suriname provided roughly 60% of the bauxite needed for the American aluminum industry. This massive demand led to a boom in production, bringing unprecedented revenues into the colony and accelerating the development of infrastructure like roads, port facilities. The boom continued through the 1950s and the 1960s. Another major company, Billiton, owned by Shell, began its own mining operations. The massive investments in the sector included the construction of the Apobaka Dam, completed in 1964, which created a large reservoir and provided hydroelectric power for an aluminum smelter. This allowed Suriname to not only export raw bauxite, but also to process it into alumina and aluminum, capturing more value. It created thousands of relatively well-paying jobs, and led to the growth of new towns. Government revenues funded education and healthcare. By the 1960s and early 1970s, bauxite accounted for over 80% of export earnings. But such reliance made the economy vulnerable. On November 25, 1975, Suriname gained its independence from the Netherlands. The moment was filled with optimism and national pride, but, also with considerable uncertainty. The new nation inherited an economy heavily dependent on bauxite and Dutch foreign aid. In the lead-up to independence, a significant portion of the population emigrated to the Netherlands, creating a brain drain of skilled workers. The new government was faced with the monumental task of forging a national identity. The initial years were buoyed by development aid. This period of fragile democracy was cut short on February 25, 1980. The military regime suspended the constitution and ruled by decree. In December 1982, the execution of 15 prominent opposition leaders led to international condemnation and the immediate suspension of development aid from the Netherlands and the United States. The loss of this crucial financial support sent the economy into a deep crisis. They attempted to run the economy through state control, but, lacked the expertise and resources to do so effectively. Foreign exchange became scarce, leading to shortages of imported goods and the rise of a black market. To make matters worse, a civil war broke out in 1986 between the National Army and a Maroon resistance group called the Jungle Commando, led by Ronnie Brunswijk. It disrupted bauxite mining operations. The government printed money to finance its expenditures, leading to hyperinflation and a dramatic collapse in the value of the Surinamese guilder. By the end of the 1980s, the country was in a dire state. The 1990s began with a slow and difficult transition back to democracy. Civilian rule was officially restored in 1991. The primary task was to stabilize the economy and restore international confidence. This involved implementing difficult structural adjustment programs. While the bauxite industry continued its slow decline, another resource began to take its place: gold. In 1994, Canadian company Golden Star Resources began developing the Gross Roseville mine, which would become one of the largest gold mines in South America. Alongside formal mining, the informal gold sector boomed. Livelihoods grew, but so did deforestation and mercury pollution. The government struggled to regulate this sprawling and often chaotic industry. By the end of the decade, the economy had achieved a degree of stability, but growth remained modest and fragile. The reliance on commodities continued, with the economic base shifting from bauxite to gold. The new millennium saw Suriname's economy gain significant momentum, driven largely by high global prices for its key commodities. The Gross Roseville gold mine, which officially opened in 2004, became a cornerstone of the economy, providing hundreds of jobs, generating substantial export revenues, tax income for the government. Alongside gold, another sector was steadily growing: oil. Staatsolie had matured into a significant player, steadily increasing onshore production and refining for local use and export. This period of economic expansion allowed for visible improvements in the country. However, the growth was not evenly distributed. Wealth remained concentrated in the commodity sectors and in the urban coastal area. Many indigenous and maroon communities saw little direct benefit while bearing environmental and social consequences. The global financial crisis of 2008 to 2009 served as a stark reminder of Suriname's vulnerability to external shocks. While the gold and oil boom brought prosperity, it also reinforced dependence on a narrow range of exports. The challenge was to use the revenues to diversify and build resilience. The 2010s were a decade of dramatic highs and lows. The first half of the decade was marked by continued prosperity, pushing the country's GDP to a peak in 2014. The government, flush with cash, increased public spending and borrowing significantly. This period of apparent strength masked growing, underlying vulnerabilities. The situation reversed sharply around 2015. A steep drop in global prices for gold and oil hit the economy hard. Government revenues plummeted, the value of the Surinamese dollar collapsed, leading to soaring inflation that eroded the purchasing power of ordinary citizens. In 2016, Suralco ceased all operations, marking the definitive end of an era. In 2015, major international oil companies began exploring for oil in Suriname's deep offshore waters. These efforts were spurred by massive discoveries in neighboring Guyana's waters. Companies like Apache Corporation, Total, now Total Energies, announced their first significant offshore discoveries. These announcements signaled Suriname was on the cusp of becoming a major oil producer. The key challenge was clear. Could Suriname learn from its past boom and bust cycles to manage this potential new windfall responsibly and ensure the benefits were shared by all? The 2020s began under a cloud of immense difficulty. The COVID-19 pandemic delivered a severe blow to the global economy, and Suriname was not spared. Tourism evaporated, trade slowed. This external shock compounded a pre-existing debt crisis. In 2021, Suriname secured an IMF agreement, restoring macroeconomic stability, restructuring debt, implementing deep structural reforms. The reform program required painful measures. Households were hit hard by high inflation, but these efforts rebuilt credibility and laid groundwork for sustainability. As of October 25, 2025, the outlook is dominated by the promise of offshore oil, major discoveries by Total Energies, major discoveries by APA Corporation. In Block 58, the final investment decision for the first large-scale project is imminent. First oil expected in the late 2020s. The government is working to establish a sovereign wealth fund and strengthen regulatory oversight to manage revenues transparently. Suriname stands at a historic turning point. Sugar, bauxite, gold, oil, each boom brought opportunity, each bust brought hardship. Dependence on a single resource is risky. Strong, transparent institutions are essential. The challenge is to use oil revenues to break the cycle, invest in education, healthcare, infrastructure, economic diversification. If managed wisely, this chapter can build a stable, prosperous future for all Surinamese people.